Well, hello everyone. This is Fadi. Thank you so much, by the way, everyone, for just waiting for us in such a short notice. Myself and Dr. J. Smith wanted to address something from our perspective is very important when it comes to obviously the topic of the variant readings of the Quran, and we felt maybe today would be appropriate to respond to a short video that was brought to my attention, I believe, a couple of hours ago, and I shared it with Dr. J. Smith. And thankfully, he had the time, I had the time, so that we felt like maybe today will be better than waiting for a couple of days to respond to it. Well, before I dive into the issue, I just want to thank everyone for being here. Thank you for the moderators. And this live stream is a little bit special. It might be shorter than usual. Typically, we go for an hour, but do not be kind of like saddened if we end up finishing within 30 minutes or so. With that said, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. J. Smith first to give you a little bit of background about the issue itself before we talk about this video clip. Dr. Smith, thank you for being here with me in such a short notice. Thank you for your being responsive, I should say, to that clip that I shared with you, which was hilarious. I mean, I laughed when I saw the video. I didn't take it, in any wrong way, but I wanted just to make sure we address issues that deserve attention. With that said, please, why don't you give our viewers a little bit of background about what's going on?
Yeah, thanks, Fadi. Actually, there's two videos we're going to look at today, and what I want to do is the first one I'm not really concerned too much about because it's put up by a fellow named Farid. Farid Responds as his YouTube site. He spends very little time responding. He spends much of his time rebuking. It should be Farid Rebukes, and I don't give much time to people who spent an 8-minute video, and I think only 1 minute was on the problem. The other 7 minutes, 6.5 minutes, were just lambasting you, lambasting me, and calling us all kinds of fools and names. And you can see he loves doing this. And this really plays well in the Muslim community, so I can understand why a lot of Muslims love it. But it's the argument that he's bringing up that he wants to zero in on that we need to take seriously. But and it wasn't done by him. This is about a week ago. It was actually about 2 or 3 weeks ago when Shabir Ally did much the same thing. And it was the video that I had put up in response to his May 19th Ramadan talk, where he talks about the fact that there are variants in the Quran, and that some of these variants we've known about them. This is the first time that I've heard Shabir Ally actually admit it publicly. And Shabir Ally then goes into saying, but we need to look at the variants because Jay has put up 6 or 7 of these on his video channel on Fandor Films, and he has gone through each one of these. You and I did them together, Al-Fadi, but he zeroes in on particularly chapter 98, verse 6. And what I love about Shabir Ally, he sticks to the point. He doesn't sit there and use a lot of vitriol. He doesn't sit there and shut down people and castigate their character. He really engages with the discussion. So that's what I want to do today. I'm not interested in fellows or gals who just sit there and confront me or you. Who cares about us? We're not really the important thing here. It's the Quran, and it's what the Quran says. And it's this idea that there are these different variants, these different qira'ats. We now know what there are 10 major ones. There are first 7 and plus 3 that were added later on. The first 7 were chosen by Ibn Mujahid. The second 3 group were chosen by Al-Jazari, one in 936, the other in 1429. So you can see it's much later that these are chosen, but then each one of them have 2 narrators or like students that come after them, and so you add those, each one of them, that's 20 plus 30. So we're talking about 30 different variants, and we just looked at only 2. One between Hafs, which is the one that's used today, and the other one between Warsh in our examples that we gave. And chapter 98, verse 6, we looked at this as a possible theological problem because this would have theological implications. And it's that I think why Brother Farid zeroed in on it, because no, none of these cause theological problems, and they certainly don't call any difference in doctrine or practice or belief. Shabir Ally, in his response, made that very clear. Shabir Ally, and to give him credit, he is not concerned so much that there are differences. What he's concerned about is whether these change the doctrine, whether they change the belief, or whether they change the practice. To be fair, that really should, and that is something that should be concerned about. What I think is rather almost amusing is that it's taken them till 2020 to even get to that point. For up to this time, we've never heard this idea, well, the changes are okay as long as they don't change doctrine, belief, or practice. I've never heard that until 2020. I've always heard from Shabir Ally and everybody else that there's no difference at all. The same Quran we have today is the same Quran they had at the time of Uthman, is the same Quran that was revealed to Muhammad between 610 and 632, is the same Quran that Abu Bakr, Uthman, and Ali had. And that is the same Quran that we've always had for 1400 years, and there has been no change. This is what Shabir Ally has said for years and years and years. In every debate I've had him, he's always brought this to the fore. Until 2020, and really until May 19th, so we were just talking about a month ago, that he really went public with this idea. Well, okay, so there are changes. We have admitted, and we have known about this for 1,000 years. This has been around since 936.
We're not hearing you anymore. For some reason, the voice is crackling so bad that your voice starts to disappear and the crackling is taking over.
It's this thing again. Okay, I had the same problem with Hutun earlier. Now can you hear me if I do that? Okay, can you hear
now?
me? Hello, Jay, testing. 1, 2, 3.
Still there is crackling, unfortunately. Okay. We can play the video while you try to fix maybe the issue.
Why don't you go ahead and play the video? Go ahead.
So thank you for that background. And the issue basically for everyone else is that Jay, as you know, and Hatoun has been dealing with the variant text readings of the Quran, and Jay have done a number of those. In fact, in one of the video series that I did with him, we called it The Quran's Many Problems. We addressed the issue of the variant text readings of the Arabic. And one of those issues, as he mentioned, has to do with chapter 98 of the Quran, verse 6, 98 verse 6, which basically Jay asked me, does the word, mean this versus what the common reading is? So the word in the common reading in verse 6, chapter 98 is al-Baree'a, speaking about the creation. So it's describing the people who are idolaters and also including the people of the book, that includes Christians and Jews, as the worst of creation. So the word in Arabic used today in 1924 Cairo edition is al-Baree'a. Now there is an earlier reading, another reading, supposedly out of those 7 canonical reading, used the word al-Baree'a versus al-Baree'a. So even if you don't know Arabic, guys, you can hear me. Al-Baree'a is what is read. Al-Baree'a is one of the other readings. So the question was, is al-Baree'a really translated correctly, meaning innocent? And the answer is yes. And that's what Shabir Ally picked on. But he did it in a professional way. I commend him for that. He did not really attack our character or anything like that. I mean, I commend him for that. Even he had a sense of humor towards the end, which is fine. I mean, that's not a problem. But what we really felt necessary to address is when this vitriolic video that came, I don't know, honestly, I don't even know who Farid is. So, I mean, people kept telling me, hey, look at the video. And I shared it with you, Jay. I just wanted to see if you care to respond. I mean, if you feel like this is something important, because I want your work to be protected. I don't want anyone to feel like, your work is just mediocre, it's not worthy, and so on and so forth. You base it on research. You give evidence for that research. So with that said, guys, we're going to play the video. I think it's about 6 minutes, Jay, or 7 minutes.
But it's the first minute, I think, is Farid's confrontation about the Arabic. And then we go into Shabir Ally's, where he's actually engaging with chapter 98, verse 6. Let's look at that. Let's see what he says. And then let's do a response. I'd love to hear your response. As an Arab speaker, you're the one that really understands Arabic much better than I do. And that's why I defer to you.
Very good. Let's play the video right now, and let's go from there. And I'm going to try to just do some technical issues here. Sorry, guys.
Hope you went too far in. There you go.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying just to fix something here. It always does this to me when I'm sure.
Just go ahead. And this is I was just talking about this earlier. This is the difficulty. Okay, now we're going to go ahead. I'll come back to this.
So guys, it's going to be quiet for a little bit.
Ignorance?
Yeah.
It's not, you see, it's not just ignorance. Stupidity is a big factor here. Let me explain. Let me pull up an image. Now, according to Fadi, mashallah alayk al-Dhaki,
we've lost the sound.
They who have believed and done righteous deeds, those are the best of the innocent. Yani, what does that even mean? According to Al-Fadi's interpretation, al-Baree'a here means the innocent. Well, no, it doesn't. Al-Baree'a actually is one, it's a feminine word, all right? And two, it's singular. So, أولئك هم شر البريئة would mean they are the worst of an innocent woman, or something along those lines. Now, the word that would or that should have been used is al-Abriya. This is just basic stuff.
This is a verse in Surah al-Baree'a, into a 90th chapter, which many Muslims have memorized. Many of you will find these verses familiar. إن الذين كفروا من أهل الكتاب والمشركين في نار جهنم خالدين فيها أولئك هم شر البرية. As for those who disbelieve from among the people of the book and the polytheists, they will be in the fire, remaining therein. They are the worst of creatures. Now, the word for creature there is Baree'a. But Jay has pointed out that in the Warsh reading, the word for there, instead of Baree'a, it's al-Baree'a. It has the hamza in the middle there, and no doubling of the ya. So Baree'a. Right? So he says, well, this means innocent. And then he puzzled over this. And of course, he gets his share of chuckles here. Why would the Christians, of course, Christians would be included in Ahl al-Kitab. They mentioned Ahl al-Kitab. Why would the Christians be innocent and yet be thrown into hell? So that should have been an alert to him to realize that he's misunderstood. He's misunderstanding the Arabic here, but no, he's going forward. He's confident, and but the confidence is no replacement for a simple check. If he had just simply checked the dictionaries, and it's very easy. Lisan al-Arab is available online. Anyone can check it. You can just go and see this word al-Baree'a, and you will find that the original word is actually al-Baree'a. The way that the original Arabic word is actually al-Baree'a, which the way it is read in the Warsh reading. However, as pointed out in the Lisan al-Arab and in Lane's lexicon. Lane's lexicon is an English source. You can look that up. Anybody here can look it up. Just look for Lane's lexicon and then go look for the word Baree'a. You will find that the original word in Arabic is with the hamza, the way it is read in the Warsh reading. However, over time, Arabs have smoothed over the pronunciation of that word. So instead of saying it al-Baree'a, which has this guttural stop, which is a bit harsh in pronunciation, so you hear it like there's a sudden stop in the middle, al-Baree'a, and there is this sudden thrust of the voice, whereas al-Baree'a is smooth. So the Arabs themselves have smoothed it over time, and that's how it is represented in the most popular reading with the doubling of the ya, al-Baree'a. But the two words mean the same thing. They mean creatures. So where to be this hamza there is represented in the word al-Bari, which is one of the names of God. What does it mean? It means that God is the initiator of creation. And this is one of the names that is mentioned in the 59th chapter of the Quran. Remember, I referred to the song that includes the beautiful names of God. So al-Bari, that means the originator. So al-Baree'a, that is the thing that has been originated, that has been brought into creation by God. So that's the creation. So both words in the two texts refer to the creation. So Sharrul Baree'a, the worst of creatures, Sharrul Baree'a, also the worst of creatures. I don't know why Jay wanted to read this as being innocent, because reading there doesn't fit the context and it doesn't fit the Arabic grammar either. Because to say Sharrul Baree'a, the worst of the innocents, it doesn't make grammatical sense, because for it to be the worst, like we say in English, this thing is the worst of the lot. So the lot means that there are many things to choose from, and this one is the worst of the things. So if we say al-Baree'a, that we mean the creatures, so we mean many, like the creation as a whole. So there are many in the creation. So the worst of the creation is it makes sense to say the worst of the creation. So similarly, if we say that Baree'a means the creation, then the worst of the creation makes sense. But to say the worst of this innocent, and this is a singular verb now, singular noun now. So the worst of the innocent one, it doesn't make any sense, because there is no comparison if there's only one, and this is singular. So it's not going to make sense to say that this means innocent. Grammatically, it doesn't work. So I don't know where he's got that from. And then contextually, it doesn't work. And this is why I said if he had just read the English translation properly, he would see it doesn't make any sense. I mean, he's asking, well, why would God throw us into hell if we are innocent? But the verse is not saying you're innocent, my dear friend. The verse is saying, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا مِنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ وَالْمُشْرِكِينَ. Those who disbelieved from among the people of the book and the polytheists. So it's already saying that you have disbelieved. It's already charging you with disbelief. It's not saying that you're innocent. It's actually convicting you of disbelief already. So how can you read into that the verse is saying that you are innocent? Like, how do you approach text like this? So it's no, this is not a theological problem. This one example that Jay gave among the others to show that this is the one that has the theological problem, that too fails, unfortunately. So I'm sorry, Jay, you have to do some more work on this if you want to prove that there is a theological problem, or that this has a huge impact on Muslim practice. But I don't think you've done that yet. You have to do some more work. Jay promises at the end that there will be more for him to show, and Jay, we are waiting. And God willing, as soon as he comes up with some more examples, I'll do a little bit of homework that I can by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I will try to produce replies in an effective and efficient way.
So, Jay, and I muted you, by the way. You can unmute yourself. For some reason, the crackling has started to happen again. I apologize, brother. But let me, I'm going to have to mute you so that my crackling can stop. Yeah, it is still going. I'm sorry, brother. So what I was saying, Jay, it seemed like, again, I appreciate Shabir Ally's effort. No doubt it was done in a professional manner. No one can deny that. And I appreciate the length that he took to try to explain his position. Again, no doubt that he tried his best to explain it. I disagree, respectfully with him that the word doesn't mean what we insinuated, meaning al-Baree'a doesn't mean innocent. That's number one. Number two, I like the fact that he mentioned that the reading was al-Baree'a, and over time, it's softened to be read al-Baree'a. At least I appreciate his honesty that there has been an evolution in the reading itself. And then another thing he mentioned, there is no theological impact. Well, I am really surprised that someone like Shabir Ally would say something like this, because in the context itself of that chapter, it's talking about basically people being created, like in verse 5, according to the fitrah, meaning you are created to be a Muslim monotheist, and then you are deviating from that, becoming an idolater or a Christian or a Jew, meaning You're no longer an innocent person by following Islam. You are now becoming an idolater by rejecting Islam. The doctrine of fitra is there, and fitra definitely means that every child, according to Islam, is born according to the fitra, born innocent. Now, I'm surprised, really, Shabir Ally just recently, I think it was last Friday, Sunday, did a whole show about me doing a series on the original sin and proving that even the Quran acknowledges that original sin exists. The sole argument was Islam doesn't teach something like this. And I would agree with Shabir that the Islamic position is that there is no such thing as original sin, that Muslims, in fact, all of humanity is born innocent, and then later they become sinful people. So the context of this chapter actually deals with this, that people are born or created according to the fitra, and they deviate from this. So there is a theological problem here. Now, let me show, he appealed to a couple of dictionaries. One of them was Lane Dictionary. So I'm going to do my best right now to try to show people, the findings from the Lane Dictionary. So I'm going to go ahead and do the shared screen one more time, if you don't mind that, Jay, because we want to just help people see what we're trying to talk about here. So if I were to go again, it looks like I won't be able to share this one for some reason, unfortunately. Here it is. I found it. So let's go there right now. And I'm going to show people. This is Lane Arabic English Dictionary. The word here is bari, which means free. Free from what? Free from evil, free from being responsible, meaning that you're in a state of responsibility of something. You are acquitted from something. You're in a state of immunity, basically, from something. Innocence. That's what it means, technically speaking. So when Jay mentions that there is one of the canonical readings that says the Christians and the Jews are the worst of al-Baree'a, of those who are innocents. What does the innocence mean here? It means that they're created to be innocents, but they chose not to stay in that status. So that's really what the readings will say. Here's another interesting thing about this particular reading that I'm showing you. If we continue to read, we get to the next part that applies to what our friend Farid was saying. Remember, he made fun that Baree'a is a feminine. Well, sadly, the Baree'a here is the feminine of Bari', and the plural for that would have been Baree'at. But why is he upset that it is feminine? Because the context itself does require a feminine word to match basically what's going on grammatically. And it doesn't change the meaning whatsoever. Even Baree'a, the reading that is taking place right now in the 1924 Cairo Quran, is also a feminine reading in the singular. So I'm not really so sure what Farid's point was, other than maybe he's just trying to fill some time because maybe he limited himself to 8 or 9 minutes of a video. That's quite possible. He wanted just to fill something and just to say anything for the purpose of maybe showing off as if he knows the Arabic. I heard him say a word in Arabic. He says, Dhaki mashallah alayk. And I would say the same thing to him, Dhaki mashallah alayk. That was really a good way to pronounce something like this, meaning that calling me intelligence, mashallah, basically that I am intelligent, but he didn't mean it in a positive way, obviously. So all that to say is that the word bari or baree'a means innocent. Now, when we get to the same dictionary, the Lane Dictionary, amazingly, this dictionary made a distinction between baree'a or bari' and baree'a as used in the Quran. What an interesting thing. I mean, why would the dictionary make a distinction between the two? Here is the word, as everybody can see it, that is used in the Quran, right here at the top, the creation. This is the word that is used right now. So notice the dictionary distinguished between the meaning of Baree'a, innocent, and al-Baree'a, creation. There is one last point that I want to mention here that is necessary. I appreciated Shabir Ally's mention that the word originally would have been al-Baree'a, but over time it evolved into this reading. And that is true because most commentators agree that the word would have been read al-Baree'a initially, but then it's changed. But here's the problem. The reason why it changed, according to Tabari, for instance, is that the Arabs rejected that reading. They rejected the reading because it doesn't fit basically with the way they say things. Yet Shabir says the Arab used to say it al-Baree'a, and it just, the pronunciation changed over time. Big difference between the pronunciation changing and being rejected as inappropriate or inaccurate, for instance, reading, because al-Baree'a comes from a word that describes mud, turab in Arabic, soil, meaning that creation, mankind was made out of mud or clay. The Quran even acknowledges this. So that was really what I wanted to say here as far as my part is concerned, to prove that Jay's interpretation as he showed it to me, al-Baree'a doesn't mean innocent, remains and stands to be accurate. With that said, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Jay.
Yeah, I mean, this is one reason why we need to bring you into these kind of discussions. It's very important that we get a native Arab speaker rather than somebody who's white or somebody who's an American to try to make this point. I am not at all, and I've said this many times, neither Hatun nor I are Arab linguists. We are not experts on this. I don't know how many times I have to keep reminding people that. But we do trust the Arabs who are looking at this. We do trust people like you to actually come out with these arguments. This is not an argument that I'm making. This is an argument that other Arabs are making who are linguists and have looked at these verses. Now, to be fair, Shabir is showing and he's saying that this did get changed over time. Understandably, that just makes our point. The fact that they were changed over time supports the notion that the Quran was quite fluid in the late 8th, early 9th, up until the 10th century. But that is not what we would expect of a scripture where in chapter 10, verse 15, in chapter 15, verse 9, in chapter 18, verse 27, where it's very clear that Allah guards, preserves his scripture from this kind of changes. What does it mean to guard or preserve? Where do you find the guarding and preserving if over time those who are writing these Qira'at are changing it, are manipulating it, and are, as we have heard, are going from either creature to innocent or innocent to creature? If both are fine and acceptable, then what does that say about God's holy word? And that's why I really want to get back to this notion, this idea of preservation. The whole reason why this became such a shock about a number of weeks ago for the whole Muslim world when our good friend Muhammad Hijab interviewed Dr. Yasir Qadhi, and where Yasir Qadhi said, this is a problem for us. We've created there's a big hole here that we don't know how to fill. And he was even saying that you traditionalists don't know how to answer this question. This is a legitimate question that we in the West are bringing up. We don't have a red line that we stop at. Here in the West, we don't have red lines. You can ask any question you want. And we are asking this question, and we're bringing it up because we need some response. Now, the kind of response that we're getting here, we're finally getting some response from Shabir Ally. Farid, I'm not going to pay much attention to him because for him, for him, it's entertainment. But for Shabir, this is very serious for him. He understands and he understands that those who are listening to his channel want to have answers on this. He lives in Toronto. He has to work with both the Western crowd and the Eastern crowd. And so this idea of changing through time, whether or not it's innocent or whether or not it's creatures, the fact that there are two different writings, and you can see visually, these are written differently. You have said that very clearly in the show already today. They are written differently. They do have different diacritical marks on it. And that will change. You can change. It's very clear that from Lane's dictionary that this can easily be referred to as innocent.
if that is the case, this is just one. We only put up, what, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4. We only put 5 examples up in the video that I gave. It was fascinating that Fadi only zeroed it on this one. He didn't go to the other 1, 2, 3, 4. No, it's actually we put up 6. So he didn't go to the other ones. He only went on this one. And it's interesting that Shabir Ally really found this one the most engaging, because this would, if there is any hint that there might be a difference in belief or a difference in practice or a difference in theology, that would not only undercut this idea that God preserves or guards his text, it also shows that at the time when these diacritical marks were being introduced and then were being compiled into the different, well, as we know, 30 different Qira'at and 30 different ahruf, at that time, there was a huge discussion going on as to which dots go over which letter to create what word to mean what sentence. And we're trying to help, and we're listening. We've been trying to say this. I've been saying this, for goodness sake, since 1995. For heaven's sakes, Muslims, don't keep telling us that there's only one Quran and that the Quran has never changed. When you look at something as simple as chapter 98, verse 6, how that could be changed, what that does with the theology if you do change it. If this is just one of 93,000 we have found 93,000. We're going to go through, we don't have time to go through all 93,000. It would be nice, but nobody has really unpacked these to see what there are changes. It's obvious that there are changes, and they are substantial, and they do change the doctrine, and they do change the belief and practice, depending on where you're going to go with either Warsh or with either Hafs. That's just 2 of 30. Fascinating that both Warsh and Hafs are not part of the original 10. That's something that we haven't talked about yet. They come after the original 10. They come after the first 7, after the next 3. They are the ones that are in the next tier of readers, or you might say narrators. But Al-Fadi, can you understand then why we need to first of all make sure that the people who are listening to either Farid or to Shabir Ally, that this difference has nothing to do with me in my Arabic. It has everything to do with what you're coming up with as a native Arab speaker. For you grew up speaking Arabic. You are from Saudi Arabia. I know Farid made a lot of stupid comments about you, and I think this is unfortunate. And I've seen, but people are saying this on the internet. For heaven's sakes, give him the right to claim his own narratives. Give him the right to claim his own language, and give him the right to know that he is not only aware of Arabic, he is using it. Now remember, Al-Fadi is doing this kind of work day in and day out. This is what his doctorate is on. He is looking at the earliest manuscript. He's looking at the Sana. He is looking at the Arabic that is there. He is doing this kind of work all the time. I doubt that Farid's doing this. I know that Shabir Ally is not doing this. I know that Shabir Ally, as good as Arabic it is, it's not his native tongue. And more than that, I don't think that Shabir Ally has done the work on manuscript material as you have done. That was very apparent to me when we had our debate in 2014, 6 years ago, when he hadn't even looked at these other manuscripts. He wasn't even aware of the 6 manuscripts that I introduced to him 6 years ago, and certainly has not looked at the razm of every one of those manuscripts. So something those hearers, those people who are on the internet need to know. Al-Fadi, you are gaining a name. You are creating a space for yourself. We do respect your Arabic, and we also respect the fact that you can come back with almost every one of these arguments, and these are good arguments, and you do have a response. Now, let me just say one other thing as well, Al-Fadi. What you see going on right here is what we call peer review. Explain that a little bit to people, what we're talking about. What is happening? What is this idea, peer review?
Well, basically, let's say for me, as an upcoming scholar in the field of early Quranic manuscript, if I were to come up with a finding and I write let's say a white paper on it, I would like for people actually to pay attention to it, to critique it, but at least people who are in the same field, who have the same knowledge, who can understand the intricacies of these issues and push back. I mean, there is nothing wrong, by the way, of being criticized in an academic fashion, in an intellectual way. You know, when you start attacking character and attacking people, that's made for fun. You know, that's not really an actual academic way to respond to things. So Dr. Daniel Brubaker, for instance, came up with a book. You and I did a quick peer review for him. How? By going through the book in video series, allowing the masses actually to be exposed to it. And along with that came scholarly work that resulted in some writing papers about this, which you will be addressing. Yeah.
One person, Sidki, Haitham Sikbi, is the only one that's really responded to that. And that is a fact. That is now, response to Haitham Sikbi is now in the offing. We were going to do one this week, but we're holding off and letting those who are much more adept at this to do that. So that is about ready to come out. I know Dan Brubaker is coming out with a response because we've asked him to do that. But that's called peer review. Now, the problem with most peer review that happens, especially in academic circles, it takes 6 months to get your article into a journal, to get published, and then to people to read it. As you can see with Sidki's article, he wrote that in November of 2019. Dan came out with his book in May of 2019. So we're talking about quite a few months. And still, we're now 7 months later, and there still has not been a response to Sidki's article. Well, we're getting 2 responses that are coming up right now. Brilliant responses. You just read it this morning, what I sent to you from another one of those who are actually taking this very seriously. I think it's brilliant that finally academics are taking it seriously. That is completely different on the internet. On the internet, we get peer reviewed within minutes. Oh, within seconds. Even I'm looking at the comments that are right here on the screen. We're getting peer reviewed even as we are having our talk. And this is the beauty of YouTube. YouTube, we get a response immediately. And we can go and look and see where our failings are. We can go and see where our weaknesses are. We can go and see if we have said something or mispronounced something or misquoted someone. That's important that we get this kind of feedback. We're not going to pay attention to people who just sit there and throw vitriol at us. If they're just calling us names, listen, who cares about us? It's usually we notice this at Speaker's Corner, Al-Fadi, sorry, I'm calling you Al-Farid now, Al-Fadi. In Speaker's Corner, listen, I spent 25 years there on the ladder. We used to get enormous amount of peer review within seconds, and we got huge, enormous backlash to the point where I got knocked off the ladder a few times. That's not the kind of peer review you want. But what was fascinating to me, we pretty much knew that when Muslims started punching us or started using death threats or started using any kind of threats, that they had pretty much lost the argument by that time. And we almost knew that when the argument turned into vitriol and ad hominem, well, that's when we knew that they had run out of ideas. We would do these what we call 5-minute debates. I've had numbers of them with Adnan Rashid. I've had it with others as well. I mean, I've had a good long debate with Muhammad Hijab. It's up on Fander Films. These 5-minute debates, they're impromptu. You have no books, you have no preparation. You just show up at the corner, you get up, each person gets up on a ladder, and we start back and forth, go for 5 minutes. All we need is a timer. And the crowds are huge. The crowds love those kind of debates. What I found was fascinating is that depending on the subject, especially on subjects that were against the Quran or against Islam, that were polemical against Islam, that almost invariably the Muslims ran out of material after about 15 minutes. The Muslims ran out of material after about 15 minutes. Whereas we as Christians could continue on for about 2 hours with the kind of material that we had. We had so much more material than they had. And we as a team, we came to realize that the reason for that is that Muslims are not used to being attacked or polemicized in a public context, and certainly not on these issues. Can you see the enormous reaction from that interview just back in June 8th between Muhammad and Yasser, Muhammad Hijab and Yasser Ahmed Qadi. That enormous reaction across the Muslim world, so much so that Yasser Qadi had to shut down the comments because comment after comment, hundreds, thousands of comments, and they were all saying that you're going to have to pay the price, and Judgment Day, things like that. On the other side, Muhammad Hijab just took out the whole 30 minutes where the damage was done. This is something that's revealing. It's something that doesn't surprise me because we saw this at Speaker's Corner. Muslims are not yet aware of all the damage that is yet to come their way especially on the Quran and especially on Muhammad, on those two things, when we start applying historical criticism. And what almost invariably happened whenever they ran out of material after, say, 15 minutes, they then went into vitriol. They went into ad hominem. They went into all kinds of accusations against the way we looked, how fat I looked, or how old I looked, or how my voice was crackling, or how I looked nervous. You name it, they did it. And for our women like Hatun, the things they said about Hatun, because Hatun and I many times would be on the ladder together. For 3 years, we were on the ladder next to each other. The things they would say about her, it was almost all of it was sexual. It was just horrendous. But we didn't get bothered because we almost knew that when this kind of response came up, this kind of review came up, we knew that they really had run out of material. Now, see, we as Christians never would do that. We don't have to stoop to vitriol. Have you noticed? Do you see Christians who are using vitriol and ad hominem? Well, I have to be careful. There are a few, whose names I won't repeat right now. But on the whole, and by and large, Christians do not use vitriol. We do not attack people's character. We don't need to. There's no need to, because it's the material that we're engaging with, not people's personality. I don't really care dilly swat about you, Al-Fadi, as a person. Well, I do actually, as far when I'm having an argument with you. It's what you're saying that I want to engage with. And likewise, you've been the same way with me. And that's why I love working with you, because I've never seen any vitriol coming out of your mouth. I've seen you as a humble man. I've seen you continue come back to the subject that we're talking about. Even when you've been lambasted, even when you have had these kind of ad hominems against your character and against your Arabic, like you're seeing here. And that's why it's important. I hope people are hearing this. We need to stick to these arguments. Let's stick to the arguments about the Qira'at. Let's do what Shabir Ally does. God bless him. He stuck to the arguments. He maintained a balance there, and he kept a good 6 to 7 minutes. It was just taking and backing, going idea after idea on chapter 98, verse 6, on chapter 98, verse 6. And then at the very end, he smiled and he says, Jay, I expect some more to come from you. And we're waiting, inshallah, if God will give it, if I have the time. That's called good peer review. That's the kind of debate we're looking for. That's the kind of discussion we're looking for.
Absolutely. And in fact, I want to, Jay, with your permission, I would love to invite Dr. Shabir Ally to come here on my show, me, you, and him, if he's willing to engage us in these discussions about the variant text readings and what he says about the early Quranic readings and how it evolves and so on and so forth. This is a worthy topic. If he's willing to come here and show us his knowledge about these things, that would be great.
Now, we're going to continue, as far as I can see, we're going to continue putting up other examples. The problem is not many people have done this. Have you noticed? The problem is this has not been well researched, these variants that we've come. I think before Hatun and I, back 4 years ago in 2016, until we introduced these different Qurans down there at Speaker's Corner and got the reaction we got, it showed us that if there's this kind of reaction, almost shock on the faces of the young men and women who are watching us, to the point that the Muhammad hijab had to finally pull everybody out of the crowd, all the Muslims out of the crowd, and come to him to get away from hearing this, which I suggest caused us a crisis of faith for Muhammad hijab 4 years ago, which finally he was able to get Yasser Qadi in the same chat show to ask him this same question that should have been answered 4 years ago when we first introduced it. And if this was so new to so many Muslims, these Qira'at, these ahruf, if this was that new, and remember what Yasser Qadi said, this is not something we talk about in public. Don't bring this up in public. Talk to me afterwards or take my class, but not in public, not on camera. We don't talk about this in public. We have a red line beyond which we don't go beyond. And I think that may be the reason we're getting this kind of response, possibly, Al-Fadi. It is so new. There are so few people who have gone on the internet yet, who've come up onto YouTube, who have referred or even engaged with these type of Qira'at, these type of differences. But then understand why it is, or why we are getting this kind of reaction. Why is it that they're defaulting back to vitriol so quickly? And I think the reason is because these do bother an awful lot of Muslims. This question that you have not one, not two, not three, but 30 official now. We've Hatun has found 37, but official, there are 30 different Qira'at that are starting to be introduced in the late 8th century up into the 9th century. And I'm going to be doing a whole talk on this, just looking at the dates. You need to look at the dates when these were being introduced, and they had nothing to do with Muhammad. They had nothing to do with the 7th century. Nonetheless, can you see, for Muslims hearing this for the first time, going to their scholars and say, what is going on? What is going on? I went and looked at the comments below Farid. I wanted to look at the comments below Farid's video that he put up last week. Have you done that, Al-Fadi?
You know, brother, I don't bother with these kind of characters. And I feel like, it will be a waste of time for me to look at things like this.
I looked at the comments because I wanted to see how people were, and almost categorically, right across the board, they were in praise of Farid. Huge amount of praise. But what was fascinating was this resonant same theme that came up over and over again. I was waiting for someone to do this. Thank God for Farid. Finally, you have shut down Jay Smith and Al-Fadi. Thank you, Farid, for doing this. And you could see for a lot of these Muslims, they don't have anything else. They have never, ever engaged at this level. The average Muslim on the street or the average Muslim on YouTube has never come across this kind of criticism. And I'm looking and I'm saying, what did Farid do besides just call us fools and idiots? He didn't spend any time really engaging with the material. And when he did, 1 minute, that's all he did was engage it for 1 minute. Are you watching the video? Did you even read it? Did you listen to it? Can you repeat what he said? Can you engage with his argument? Because there's not much of an argument there. Shabir Ally had a much better argument. He spent a good 6 minutes trying to understand, trying to unpack the difference between innocence and creature, and trying to understand what Lane said. But he didn't read all of Lane's, as you have done here. It's important that we do that. And that's why it's fascinating to maybe this is the reason why people like Farid are becoming popular, and why maybe this is something that we should expect from here on out. But what we need to do, Al-Fadi, is keep to the subject, keep to the argument, forget about the personalities, forget about us, forget about you and me. Let's make sure that in everything we do, we always unpack that which we say and support that which we claim. If we are going to claim that these are two different words, if we are going to claim that they do come from two different compilations, if we claim that this is a problem, we need to support it, but not get caught off in all these side issues. Let's stick to that. And what I would like to do eventually is get to the Razm material. I'm still waiting to get to the Razm material, because there is where the real damage is going to happen. And I'd like to get to what Sidki said. I would love to hear a response to Sidki's article, because if you really look and see what Sidki is saying, goodness sake, the poor man, he is way out of his element. It's obvious that he does not know that which he has tackled. But nonetheless, this is yet to come out. This will yet come. And at that time, let's make sure, Al-Fadi, we need your help. You're the one that knows the Arabic. You're the one that grew up with the Arabic. You're the one that is engaging in the Arabic. You're the one that is using the Arabic. You're the one that is studying it. You're researching it, and you're doing it on these very manuscripts we're talking about. You're looking at the manuscripts that don't have diacritical marks, who then were created with diacritical marks at a later date. And that's why you're the man to go to in this. And that's why I'm so glad that you've given this time. I'm so glad that you've offered to bring this up on your own channel. And I'm so glad that we've had this time together to unpack it. Look at chapter 98, look at verse 6, and see that in 98 verse 6, innocent is certainly one of the definitions you can use for that word. More so, it's probably the better definition. And of course, this was changed a long time as people started just, repeating it over and over again and writing it differently, as Shabir Ally said.
Absolutely, brother. And I echo what you said. I appreciate the candor and the respect in Shabir Ally's response. Now, I know he doesn't agree with me. I know he doesn't agree with you, but we're not doing things for people to praise us and agree with us. We're doing things based on data, on research, on findings. And it seemed like in the last 2 to 3 years, there is more and more of these new findings that are extremely damaging. And I can see the reaction. I can understand it. I remember myself when I was a follower of Islam, that when I hear something negative, I'll react this way. I mean, I'll make Farid look basically, and his reaction look like a schooler, actually, in the way I used to react. But nevertheless, to try to refute a serious argument about manuscripts with a comic video is just, I mean, it baffles you. I mean, is this how this serious issue is going to be responded to? And I tell you why. I remember now that I think it was him. I was given a 4-minute video about 2 years ago. If you remember, you and I did the video series on Dan Brubaker's book. I was given a 4-minute video. I believe it was Farid also. It says this 4-minute video destroyed Dan's research. And I looked at it, and it was 1.5 minutes that addressed even the book. And I mentioned to the, I think it was Mansour Ahmed who shared that in a tweet with me and others. And I said, I cannot believe that a 10-year worth of research by Dr. Brubaker, a dissertation, a PhD, and thousands of manuscripts that he physically looked at, photographed, can be refuted with a 4-minute video. That's a tragedy in and of itself, Jay, if that's the case.
That in some ways, what you brought up is one of the great things about YouTube and one of the failings about YouTube. YouTube can easily degenerate to the lowest common denominator, and 4 minutes is pretty much sometimes is the attention span that many of people who do go to YouTube spend on. But those who are serious want the much more in-depth analysis, and that's what we're going to be doing. We continue to do that. It is important because we are confronting Islam at its very foundations, Al-Fadi. And for those who are listening, and this will damage Islam more so than anything else. Once you confront the book and the man, the book and the man, the book and the man, and we're confronting the book now. I wasn't planning to do it this early, but then I didn't know that that our good friend Shabir Ally would come out with his video on May 19th, and I certainly didn't know we were going to have this interview between Muhammad Hijab and Yasser Qadi on the 8th of June. In some ways, what a gift those two videos were. So I had to then really completely refocus over just onto the Quran. And I think because of the fact that we are confronting Islam at its foundation, this is only new. This has only really been out in probably the last 20 to 30 years let's go a little beyond that. It's probably the last 50 years that the Quran has really been confronted. But that's only been in academic circles. There was no YouTube back then. This did not play out on radio or on television. It's only really been in the last 6 to 7 years, maybe even the last 5 years, where this has been brought to the wide world by YouTube. And YouTube has been a real vehicle to get this out into every house, into every home, where we're not just getting 1 or 200. Take a look, almost every video we put up, we get thousands of viewers within just 1 or 2 days. And tens of thousands that are going up. And so because of this, it is confronting Muslims and causing these crises of faith. I could see that by the comments that I just looked at on Fadi's channel. You could see that there's an awful lot of very scared, fearful Muslims. And please, Muslims, we are not there to make you fearful. We're not there to make you scared. That's not our intent. What we want to do is we want the same thing that has been done to our Bible. This is nothing new that we're asking. When we're looking at at literary criticism, looking for a text that Muslims have claimed. Listen, you have claimed this for years, as long as I have been engaging with Islam. For 40 years now, I've heard this recurrent claim that the Quran is the only scripture that can be traced back to its originals, that we have the original Quran. I remember Adnan Rashid getting up there and said, we have 1,000 of these that go back to the time of Uthman. We did a debate in 2013, and there he is with his dark glasses and his long hair, claiming from the ladder, Mansour, where are you? Come and help me out. We have 1,000 of these. I have one in my house, he said. I remember that. That was just 2013. Shabir Ally, in most every one of our debates, used to make this claim all the time, that we can go back to the manuscripts that we have today. And he pointed specifically to the Topkapi. He pointed specifically to the Samarkand, 2 of the major 6 manuscripts that exist today. 6, isn't that interesting? Only 6. That's all they can come up with. 6, when we have 24,000 of the New Testament alone. We have 263 of them that predate the 7th century, and they can only come up with these 6. And yet it was fascinating when Adnan made that claim, when Shabir Ally made that claim. I didn't really have any recourse. I didn't really could go back, because at that time when we were having these debates in 1997, in 1998 with Shabir Ally, in 2000 with Shabir Ally, until 2014. Only until 2014 was that I was given this research that was done by Dr. Tahir Altakulic and Dr. Ekmelin and Sanadu, the first ones to look and actually go and spend 5 years doing forensic testing on these 6 manuscripts. These were Muslim scholars. And all I had was what their conclusions were. And what's fascinating to me is we have been asking this, we have been trying to find out whether or not there is an original Quran. Where is this original Quran that Muslims have always talked about? And we have always known that there were probably quite a few Qurans that they did not all agree. And we've always known that no Quran goes back to the 7th century. Not one Quran goes back to the 7th century. Now they've come up with the Birmingham folios, and we've now looked at those. We've now seen they've come up. Adnan Rashid 2 weeks ago said that the Husseini manuscript goes back to the time of Uthman, and then he corrected himself and he says within the 1st century AH. So the claims after claims we're coming fast and furious, have been coming fast and furious. And what's fascinating to me is, as Muslims who are the scholars, the ones who are the leaders, the ones who now are taking the rest of the Muslim world with them, as they make these claims, have you noticed their claims have been getting smaller and smaller and smaller? From 1,000 manuscripts that he claimed back in 2013, it came down to, by 2014, to 6 manuscripts. This is Adnan Rashid. And even those when I confronted Shabir Ally in public there in Toronto in our debate there, he was not ready at all to claim that every one of these manuscripts was equal. What he did say, and all he did, the only defense he could give at that time was that he didn't really care as long as you could find this miracle of the number 19. Number 19. If you look at this set of verses, you look at this set of verses, you get 19. If you look at this passage with this passage, you get 19. I kid you not, he took 19 minutes to make his argument. I went back and timed it. 19 minutes to make his argument. And I finally said to him, what verses are you talking about? Where are there any verses on any of these manuscripts? Where are these 19 verses that you're talking about? They didn't have versification on any of these manuscripts. There was no, they didn't have the same versification that we even have today. The verses that are today have not even been standardized. And so when he finally realized that we weren't talking, that the claims he was making could not be supported by the manuscripts I was showing, he finally admitted, well, this is the 1924 Hafs text that he is referring to. So now the claims comes back to not just 1,000 to 10 to 6. Now it's come back to 1 that was chosen in 1924, just for the city of Cairo. But we're going to continue to ask these questions, because that 1 that was chosen in 1924, why did they choose that one? Why the Hafs? That's the next question we want to go to. Why the Hafs? Al-Fadi, do you have an idea? Let's go ahead and get started, because I would love to know if you have an opinion as to why Hafs was chosen.
It's been fascinating to me. And Jay, I have to tell you, if things back then worked the same way as today, I would argue that Hafs probably has a prominent position, a relative that was maybe connected to the caliph. Maybe he himself was connected to the caliph. Other than this, I do not see why, because some of the other readings actually are even better than Hafs, if you look at it. I mean, as an Arab speaker, when you look at some of the other readings, sometimes they read better than Hafs. They actually capture the context much better. In fact, I would tell you there are readings in the Sana'a manuscript which predate even Uthman, by the admission of some scholars. It reads even better than the 1924 Hafs reading. So
I'm not going to tell you the answer right yet. That we're going to hold on to. But I want to see if any Muslims listening know, why would his name's Muhammad Ali ibn al-Husayni al-Haddad. That's his name. That's the guy that was in charge of the committee that chose Hafs. Why do you think Muhammad ibn al-Husayni al-Haddad chose the Hafs? H-A-F-S. Just for Cairo. Just for the Educational Authority. Leave it there. That's another one. Wait till you hear what we think we now know. It looks like what all the roads are leading to. But this is something that is coming up in academia, and this is now filtering down into the schools, the seminaries and the colleges and the madrasas, and this will now soon make it to YouTube. Once it gets to YouTube, then the discussion will continue on that category. Sooner or later, we're going to get back to the 7th century. Sooner or later, we're going to get back to the original Quran. Sooner or later, we're going to get back to Abu Bakr and Uthman's Quran. And when we get to that one, That's where I really want to engage, and that's where I really want to go. This whole Qira'at and all these different delineations, I think reading pretty one now since the beginning of this month. This is the last day of the month, but the beginning of this month, it looks pretty clear that this idea that there is one Quran has been blown out of the water. That has been pretty clear. There are many Qurans. Now the discussion is, do these Qurans change the theology? Do they change the belief? Do they change the practice? That's what Shabir Ally is trying to get back to. That's what he's trying to, desperate to make sure that we only talk about. Right? Because for him, it doesn't matter that there's all these changes. I just don't want any theology changed. I don't want any belief change. I don't want any practice change. And so that will continue. That will continue. But Shabir and Farid, there's a much more damaging question yet to be asked. And that's the one we are soon going to get to. We need to get to, and it's over here. It's in the 7th century. It's the much earlier manuscripts. It's the Razm argument. And we're not ready yet to come public with that one. That one will be going, because once we start bringing the Razm argument into this discussion, I think then you're going to see an awful lot of name calling. I think you're going to see an awful lot of vitriol. I think you're going to see an awful lot of anger that is going to come our way. We're prepared for it. We're used to it. We know it. We've had it. Listen, I've spent 25 years getting abused. I've got thick skin. And all the time I spent.
What is so sad, Jay, is the other day I was looking at Adnan Rashid's tweet communication with Dr. Brubaker. I hate to say words like this. It was absolutely disgusting, the amount of disrespect that he was waging at Dr. Brubaker, and the gracious way Dr. Brubaker responded to it was amazing to me. Absolutely amazing, so it shows you the contrast between the two. Mansour Ahmed was upset, when the show that was done on the book, and he made fun of the book. Now he's excited that someone wrote 16 pages to review a book that is only 100 pages or so long. Amazing response. And by the way, even the person who did it, as you said, his specialty really is not early Quranic manuscript. I appreciate his effort. Definitely, he's a wonderful person. I listened to a lecture of his, but I hope that Muslim scholars whose field is Islamic manuscripts, Quranic manuscripts, will respond to the book. And here's the thing, Jay, the fact that
one response today from one of these scholars, it is brilliant. It has to go public, yes, so I'm not permitted to say that.
Yeah, absolutely. You and I know the scholar. My hope, what I'm saying is it's amazing that Dr. Shabir Ally took the time to talk about one word in chapter 98 verse 6, and we have another person by the name Farid who also did another video about one word. How many words so far have Hatun discovered, you said?
Well, how many variants? They're not just words. Some of them are phrases. Some of them are whole sentences.
That's right.
93,000. We have only looked at one that has bothered them so far out of 5. We've only shown 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Wow. Well,
and
that is not even the most damaging material yet. We have a lot more damaging material to go to.
Absolutely. Well, brother, as always, thank you so much for the privilege of having you in the show. Obviously, this won't be the last time. We will continue to do this work, and there is more to come and more issues that are, we call it damaging, not because we want to rub it in the face of Muslims. We love you, Muslims. We're doing this. I'm sticking my neck out there because I care for you. I love you, and I want you to know the truth. The one that I found, the one that Jay found. And if you disagree with me, please go and check the sources that we're using. I never say a single thing without backing up from Islamic sources. Jay, to my knowledge, never said anything without giving you scholarly reference to where you can find this, which book, which page, and so on and so forth. So do your homework. Don't rely on a 9-minute by someone by the name Farid to refute serious argument that has to do with your salvation. Because if the book that you're basing your own salvation on has 93,000 different variants, what does that tell you about the whole book in the first place? That only has 6,236.
93 are between 23 of them. They're not all within one manuscript.
That's right, exactly. Which one is in heaven? Which one was preserved? I'm just throwing these numbers for them to think through the argument. The idea that we have a one perfectly preserved book doesn't work anymore. Thank God for social media. Thank God for YouTube. And thank God for real discoveries. Well, this is Al-Fadi. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for all of you who gave through super sticker and super chat. We are really humbled by your sacrifice. Lord bless you all. And tomorrow I will be with Alex, as always, at 6 p.m. Eastern Time to talk about why we trust the Bible. For this reason, I want you to attend to see why we trust the Bible as compared to the book that I wasted 33 years of my life following, and I'm thankful that the Lord opened my eyes to the truth. This is Al-Fadi, and copying from Jay, over and out. God bless.